Welcome everyone, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Psychopaths. Episode 9.
Yes.
We're getting into the second, getting into almost to the second half here, Jacob.
Yeah, I think this is the second act, because, after the first 8 episodes, then we had that psycho girl die.
Yes, so now that her reign of terror, so to speak,
is at an end.
Yeah.
Now we have that hunter guy with the mechanical dogs.
Yeah, so Makishima's doing everything still through proxies and hasn't been directly involved, but I think this could be where they could step it up into him maybe handling things more directly, especially since Kogami is now a dog on the trail, you know. I'm on the trail of something. All right, so let's find out what happens this episode.
The Ministry of Welfare just flagged a video as recommended.
Sure, that's fine.
All right.
Oh, that's kind of creepy.
Today I'm talking with Toyohisa Senguji, a pioneer of body cyberization and chairman of Tato Construction, which specializes in underground redevelopment.
My pleasure to be here today.
Yeah.
Recent years have seen the use of cyborg technology in all branches of medicine become affordable and accepted. But it still can be a bit unsettling to meet someone like Mr. Senguji, whose body is entirely cyborg save for his brain and central nervous system.
It remains a mystery to me why people refuse to recognize just how limiting their natural biology can be. I honestly never expected that beating the disease of aging would bring me this kind of happiness. But that's something a person can't understand until they embrace a cyborg body.
Sir, even with all our advances, I understand that the human brain cannot live beyond 150 years. Being able to fully cyberize a brain for an infinite lifespan may prove to be beyond science's reach.
Long as I keep my brain stimulated, I'll be able to squeeze plenty of life from it. Enough, I believe, for them to find a cyberization breakthrough in the meantime.
Cool.
Now I see. If that happens while you're still alive.
That's right. I'll have achieved immortality. The Old Testament tells us that God created man in his own image. Don't you think it's time for us humans to take some of God's power for ourselves?
Do you think eternal life's worth it if it means you have to become a cyborg?
I don't really care.
Yeah.
Life as a latent criminal isn't something you like to think about going on forever.
But it's always possible the social system will continue evolving, and one day latent criminals will have more rights.
I'm starting to see why your psychopath is always clear.
According to a recent survey, a supermajority of respondents said they'd be uncomfortable with any more than 50% of their bodies being replaced with cybernetics.
I understand the hesitance the public still has on this issue. But we're all more machine than we realize. Take you, for instance. You're already quite the cyborg.
Mr. Senguji, I assure you I have no artificial arms, legs, eyes, or other body parts.
But you do carry around a portable information terminal, don't you?
Well, yes. But doesn't everyone?
And a costume device?
Of course.
And your home's functions are all fully automated with an AI secretary, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
So what would happen to you if all your settings and data in those devices were to be lost in some kind of disaster?
I guess I wouldn't be able to do any work until they were restored.
Wow.
Yep. We're already like
When
that.
you hand over so much of your life and work to digital devices, the insistence you're not a cyborg doesn't sound very convincing anymore, now does it? For you, all these terminals and AI programs are practically a second brain. Am I right? It's said the arc of progress is the expansion of the body's functionality. That means man's history is also the history of cyberization, and vice versa.
Whoa. Okay.
Like I said, we're more machine than we think.
Yeah.
Hello? It's Kogami.
All right. Hold on.
I don't see much environment hollow in use here.
Because that stuff irritates the hell out of him.
Ah, the opposite.
Professor Saiga, it's been a while.
Stop calling me Professor. Don't you know how many years it's been since I quit?
Okay.
Mr. Joji Saiga, I understand you're also an expert in clinical psychology.
I started in that career, yes. But as I spent more time assisting police investigations, my interest naturally turned to criminology and profiling.
I
Yeah,
need your
there
help.
it is.
Of course. What is it I can do for you?
I'd like you to give Inspector Tsunemori a crash course on your skills.
Mainly your profiling. They say it's outdated, but it seems to have value. Watching you work is just... I mean, you've made me very interested.
I haven't seen such passion in a long time. This could be fun. So, anything else?
I was hoping you've kept a complete list of all the students who've attended your courses over the years.
Ah.
Is that an order from the MWPSB?
No, sir. It's a personal request.
Maybe he recognized something that Makishima said.
Good, because if it was an order, I would have flat out refused. Who are you looking for?
A guy who I'm pretty sure is the worst criminal since the creation of the Sybil system.
Whoa.
You're being serious.
He's proven to be exceptionally smart, genius, and he must be physically fit. His greatest skill, though, is his charisma. He rarely gets his hands dirty. Instead, he brainwashes and manipulates others into murdering for him. Think of him as a music conductor orchestrating one murder after another.
Kogami, define charisma for me, please.
Innate appeal, a personality trait that can convince others to do things.
I'll give that answer a B.
Yeah.
There are 3 elements that comprise charisma.
Yep.
As you said, there's the innate appeal often found in leaders. There's also a power to make others feel good simply by being in your presence. And finally, there's the ability to talk confidently about all things with all people. Of these 3 different elements, which does he possess the most?
I would say this guy's got all those traits in abundance.
What kind of animal do you think is the most cunning and has the lowest risk of going extinct, no matter how many are hunted and killed?
That can only be man.
That was too easy for you.
Yeah,
Nowadays,
that was a bit easy.
it's hard for the common citizen to get a hunting license.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
That pipe of yours, that's not ivory, is it?
I suppose I haven't shown it to you yet. Excluding the mouthpiece, this pipe is made from Rikako Oreo's bones.
Oh.
When I inhale it like this,
What the crap?
my mind feels as sharp as a young man's again.
Okay.
It's like I'm breathing in the souls of my terrified prey so that I might feast upon their life-giving energy.
Oh
Okay.
my gosh.
Obviously, you've overcome your body's aging. Your only worry left is your mind.
That's
Right.
exactly correct. To maintain a healthy mind and body requires some sacrifices. Particularly the lives of others.
Wow.
Unfortunately, many of those
Okay.
seeking eternal life neglect feeding their minds in favor of keeping their bodies young. This has one result, a long life as beautiful zombies. It's a rather foolish end, don't you think?
The thrill you get from a successful hunt. It's like a reward for coming face to face with death and surviving.
You're quite right. In hunting, the more dangerous your prey, the more potent the stimulation your brain gets from killing it.
Then I have good news for you. I think I can arrange for your next prey to be the most potent yet.
Go on.
Kogami.
He's an enforcer.
How intriguing.
His name is...
I heard you took Inspector Tsunemori to meet with Joji Saiga today.
Yeah?
I asked Kogami to take me there, sir.
What are you thinking, Kogami? Trying to drag her down into the mud? Make her someone who gives it all up to be a latent criminal like you?
Hey, that's not true. And I don't want you treating me like a child.
That is exactly what you are! A clueless, naive child! Why do you think we have different classifications for inspectors and enforcers? It's to lower the risk of a healthy person's psychopath becoming clouded during a criminal investigation. We have latent criminals with no hope of returning to society do our dirty work. That way, Inspector, you can fulfill your duty and protect your mind.
That doesn't sound like teamwork. Is our job to solve crimes or to protect our own psychopaths?
Yeah.
Just tell me what's important so I know.
Akane, are you trying to throw away your career? You're gonna sacrifice everything you've built so far? For what?
Sir, It's true that I'm a rookie, and I do have great respect for your seniority. But don't forget, I'm still an inspector, and we're on equal footing in terms of rank. I can manage my hue just fine, thank you. Just because you're my senior doesn't give you the right to keep embarrassing me in the workplace, or to question my psychopaths and abilities in front of our enforcers.
Snap!
Oh! Burn.
I can't believe his nerve.
Gino's his father. Well, poor guy's a latent criminal.
What?
Gino's was a little kid when they first put the Sybil system into operation. In those early days, rumors about latent criminals spread around the country like wildfire, causing mass panic.
Okay.
If anyone showed a high crime coefficient, that was enough for their whole family to get treated as if they were all latent criminals. Can't imagine being a kid and going through something like that.
I'm afraid I won't capture him alive. Is that okay?
Why, yes, of course. I expect nothing less from you.
I should mention something I don't think you've noticed. Shinya Kogami, whenever you mention him in conversation, you get such an amused look on your face.
Okay, a lot of things are getting set up this episode.
That was really good. I love how it addressed like a lot of the world building issues, like cyborg technology, for instance.
Yeah, where they're at specifically with AI being used to assist them in daily lives and stuff like that. But not only that, cyberization, as they called it, very much kind of ghost in the shell type stuff where, you know, how much of the human body can we replace in order to remove the effects of a body that eventually loses itself to time.
Right. And then the whole thing of going back on the history of the civil system. And, you know.
Yeah, we got not really a history of the civil system. We got a history of different concepts being consumed by the civil system effectively.
Right.
Like teaching and through universities and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was very interesting in that this episode covered multiple story kind of moments kind of going through and stuff
it really
like that.
did.
We had the whole Kogami Akane stuff, but spliced throughout that was that brilliant interview with the guy who I had to go back and check his name is Senguji.
Yeah.
The big corporation CEO guy who's cyberized his body. Now we find out he was the guy that was talking with Makishima all this time, and he has to kill people in order to
stay mentally healthy.
To stay mentally healthy. Yeah. I love how he like kind of logics it out that because of his body's you know, no longer being organic, basically.
Right.
He's left his meat bag status behind. He now has the problem of dealing with the demands of his brain being stimulated. Now, I wonder if that's actually a side effect of his cyberization not being perfect. I wouldn't be surprised. Because there's so many chemicals your brain generates, but also needs in order to do healthy, you know, functions. So I think he's being a proponent of more cyberization, while in fact also being a walking contradiction and hypocrisy in that his brain is not actually able to maintain its healthy status. Right. Which is interesting because that might be where Makishima eventually abandons him as well. Right.
I could definitely see that. One of the now I know there was this same kind of question with Miss Psycho Rikiko, but how has this guy not been picked up as a crazy person? Like, because he's
got money and power, and
I get that. I get that. He's got money and power, so he could totally do it. But with how open he seems to be, like
he's
like
hiding in plain sight. Yeah. Didn't you watch the most recent Sherlock season?
Yes.
Remember that guy?
Yeah.
There? Yeah. Very similar.
It totally
very
reminded
similar.
me of that.
In fact, this guy has willingly foregone so much of his own humanity. He jokes around trivially about the idea of them taking the powers of God, which is so on the nose that I almost cackled with laughter. I mean, I did laugh at it, but it was just like, dude, you're on live TV. Like, how? Like, I just find it funny.
Even if they just have like some psychopath like checker on like a street corner, you know, he would get flagged like that.
But here's the thing: what if his cyberization actually
hinders it?
Yeah.
Sure. Or maybe he's just so rich he just goes everywhere in a car, and like we saw with that place where they interviewed him, he was inside a building. So
actually, he looked like he was outside.
Well, they did the holographic thing or whatever.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Thank you for reminding me.
So maybe he just doesn't go out in public that much, and because of that, you know, he just doesn't need to worry about it.
Sure. He definitely is surrounded by powerful people. Like he was surrounded by bodyguards when he went into this interview. But not only that, he chooses to keep company with Makishima.
Yes.
And Makishima chooses to keep company with him.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder what they want from each other.
Right, because we need to see some more motivation from Makishima. I feel like they might be doing that with the world-building hints that they're dropping in here, like cyberization and all that stuff. But until they make that clear, it almost just seems like he's doing experiments, which is entertaining.
Oh, that's what he's doing, though.
Right. Yeah, that is totally what he's doing.
It's basically one of those stories where all these little things that he's doing
are
converge at some point and add up to some conclusion.
And I get the feeling this guy might stick around a lot
longer than some of the others.
Oh, I was going to say maybe less, but okay.
Oh, okay.
Well, just because he was saying that, you realize I'm going to kill Kogami, right? That's okay.
And you're saying that Kogami has to survive, so
right?
Therefore...
Now, yeah, so probably not. But Makishima might be doing this as a rite of passage for Kogami to see if he's interesting enough.
Sure. I would definitely say that while he is going to most definitely fail in his attempting to kill Kogami, he could end up killing someone else, like Masayoka.
Yeah, I could definitely see
Ginoza
that.
got sudden extra character development this episode when they're talking about killing someone else.
Yes.
And Ginoza just got kind of backhanded verbally by Akane in an awesome
that was amazing
way.
Highlight for the episode.
Because it's one of those things that I could see people criticizing Akane for, is that she's
not very assertive.
Not very assertive as a character. But in this episode, she just completely undermined that whole
it was great
type of attack and just went, nope, we are the same rank in this job. So what are you to criticize and lord over me and humiliate me in front of my peers?
And if you
or not
think
even
about
that, in front of my people that are beneath me in terms of authority.
And now here's something. So they hinted that, Akane is starting to have a bit of a crush on Kogami, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Now, if they want to actually do anything with that, like as a romantic subplot, there needs to be some, they would need to have some reason for Kogami to like Akane. That could be one of the
parts where he started to
be like,
Akane.
Okay, she's pretty cool. Like,
I don't think he's ever disliked her.
Baka.
No, my point is that
but
I just don't think he has room in his life for anything other than revenge right now. Because that's literally what Masayoka said.
Yeah, and they could do some really cool stuff with that by making it so that, it's like that line in V for Vendetta, because he cared more about revenge than he did about her.
Yeah. Also, their little talk about charisma with Professor Saiga.
Yeah.
So that was very interesting. One of the things that I've studied, not in any way as much as Professor Saiga has, but is the whole idea of micro expressions and charisma, and by extension also communication.
Sure.
And one of the things that he's right about is that we give these little tells, as he calls them. And what you can actually do, what he was doing there, is you can bring up certain topics that trick people into giving yes or no responses. So it's not that he was actually getting any info about her grandma from previous thing. The minute he mentioned her grandma or her family or anything like that, she was giving the tells.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what he was doing wasn't anything that would require cyberization or anything like that.
Which I think is great to contrast with when they
were
talking with the guy who also has the creepy eyes, and then it goes to someone without cyberized eyes who is able to notice all this stuff, and that's something you would traditionally associate with like someone like Jordy or whatever.
Right, but where Senguji was taking the data that would have been statistically likely for someone who's doing an interview with him, he brought all that to the forefront here. Professor Saiga was actually taking literal observation in front of him, combining that with the skills that he's acquired over the years to gain this knowledge. But in a way, it's subjective because he is not a machine, therefore he could make mistakes.
Yeah.
So in a way, his guesses were more risky, whereas Senguji was almost guaranteed to be right. But his magnitude of success was... Yeah, exactly. His magnitude of success to getting info on the reporter correct was lower.
One thing I want to just give a shout out to Psychopaths for is that they've been introducing these side characters and really going all out with them in making us like them quickly. A lot of times in shows, especially anime, they'll have sort of the ensemble cast of characters, but then they'll wait a long time to get around to them and make you actually invested in them.
Sure.
And this isn't doing that. Like the art guy from, you know, that other episode, we haven't seen him again, but he was great. This new doctor psychiatrist guy, awesome.
Yeah, the professor.
But, you know, this could just be a one-time meeting. Like,
yeah, exactly. I mean, to an extent, we know that they're not going to be. But for the professor, for instance, we might not ever see him again, potentially.
Except for maybe the thing of, like, training, like, giving Akane a crash course on the profiling stuff.
Although I think that was what think that was what he did, and they did that off screen.
Sure. Yeah.
So one of the things that they brought up that seemed a little bit disjointed from the rest of the episode was they were talking about how the guy that infiltrated the all-girls academy became a teacher to basically hide there.
Right. And now, he used someone else's
identity in order to do that. So does that mean that he was the one that did that, or did he get some help from some really skilled hacker in order to be able
like Makishima,
yeah.
Probably.
Okay. So I wonder if this is going to be the trail that leads them to Makishima.
I wouldn't put it past them. I think that's pretty reasonable to assume.
Because what would be fun to see is have the protagonist start to get some successes where they end up basically chasing Makishima down while he's having other people chase them down to slow them. So you have them moving at the beeline towards Makishima. On the way, he keeps sending these traps and these cronies and these other people that he's manipulated by proxy to interfere, and that's when the casualties start to mount up.
Sure.
So
now
I'm getting a little bit worried now that they explicitly stated that he wants someone to kill someone in the core, group.
Now, okay, what if he was
actually going to die?
What if he was using Senguji to actually give them a trail to follow? By having him go after Kogami.
Yes. You know? I think I wouldn't put it I wouldn't put it past Makishima.
Like, I could see that happening.
What they seem to be doing right now is that thing where they build up the villain by talking about the villain.
Right.
They do that a lot in stories actually about the protagonist a lot by having the villains talk about the protagonist a lot at their special meetings behind closed doors or what have you.
Or like with friends in the case of Shonen, where they'll be like, yes, as expected of, you know.
Yeah, exactly. They'll do that with lineage and stuff. You are the son of the so-and-so.
Right.
So obviously.
Yeah.
But with this instance, there's almost this thing where Makishima is enjoying toying with Kogami in some way.
Right.
And Senguji is a tendril of his influence reaching out, and the fact that Senguji is so willing to do this in conjunction with someone that is just dead after Makishima, because Makishima was almost busted at the academy.
Yeah,
like there were probably a few brief minutes where something could have gone wrong his way, and Kogami could have found him. So he seems to get his own stimulation to an extent from this whole thing, which I think could be a little bit of an insight to the flaws of Makishima.
Sure, because because the way to make a character interesting is to give them flaws.
Right.
And what kind of flaws would Makishima have? Because okay, they've been setting up all these sort of side villains with their shtick of their thing that's evil that they do, right?
Well, their thing that is outside of society's
that's
norm.
that's deviant, twisted, whatever, right? That they do.
Right.
Now, Makishima, I would sort of just assume is not like that because they have to sort of make him a head above the rest.
Interesting. Yes. Yeah. I agree. I don't have anything to say to that. I think that's kind of not obvious, but it's kind of we just don't know what it is. With Makishima's goals, I still don't think we're meant to know exactly what it is. I feel like he's still trying to make a point. Because when you think of all of them together, like if you combine all the antagonists from the previous, 8 or 9 episodes, we get this vibe that he's trying to make a philosophical point.
Right, because they all have
he's not speaking to anyone. So he's either making the point to society or he's making the point to himself. So let's see. Either he's making the point to a group, an individual, or himself.
Okay. Yeah.
That is the only 3 combinations that that work. I don't believe right now he's trying to make the point to himself.
Okay.
It just doesn't fit as well.
Possibly, but he hasn't. The stuff he's been doing hasn't been to make a point to society, like not really.
Well, that would be a group.
Right. Yeah, not to a group that we've seen.
Sure.
It might change, but so far, not so much.
I think it could be a group. I think that's the part where it gets tricky. Is if he's actually doing all of this because of an individual thing, then that's where it gets really interesting and personal, and we find out all of his weaknesses right at the end. But I think it's a group because of the seemingly random aspect of all these different people. Like, none of them are connected.
Okay, sure. Great point. So
yeah.
Unless he's going after someone specifically, like, in the police force.
Yeah, which, that's not him. That's Kogami.
Right.
Makishima, so far, seems to be the kind of character who, if he was going after an individual, he would be doing something to convince them. I think he might turn towards that at the end, and that's when he loses.
Okay.
Or, like, sort of loses, because he has to scale it down from, instead of just hitting a group, he chooses to compromise Akane or something.
Sure.
That's where I think actually this whole thing is going to come down to, because otherwise it's going to be just some kind of revenge thing with Kogami and Makishima staring down barrels of a gun at each other.
What if...
with a philosophical debate hanging in the air. But it actually is going to be a thing where he comes down to, whether or not Makishima's plan will go out, or he'll corrupt the incorruptible.
Exactly.
Which is Akane right now.
So do you think maybe, like, Kogami will be like an Act 2 end? Like, if we've just finished Act 1...
Kogami's going to make it all the way to the end. He's going to make it to Act 3.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Masayoka and Ginoza and Kagari and Kunizuka, they do not have to make it to Act 3.
That's true. Yep.
Yeah, I think at least 2 of them will die in the next 5 episodes.
Yeah, sure.
I think
maybe a little bit longer.
I think at most 2 of them will die in the next 5 episodes. But I would say at least 1 of them. So 1 or 2 in the next 5 episodes.
Yeah.
And then in the next, maybe 5 episodes after that, we would see 1 more death. And then it would be the question of whether or not they kill anyone in the finals.
Right.
That's not Makishima.
Right.
So Akane told off Ginoza. It was awesome. But what do you think about Ginoza's backstory?
I thought it was good. The way it was chosen to be delivered, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Like,
it felt kind of stereotypical. It felt a little bit kind of, his backstory, you don't understand. He was being a jerk, but that's just because his backstory.
He's actually still kind of a brooding teenager,
Yeah. Now that I think about it, he was actually kind of acting more childish for the sake of keeping other people out of their childishness.
Right.
Which is funny to think about. So it makes Ginoza even more hypocritical.
Right.
But it's like he's hypocritical for a good cause, much like the Sybil system.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
What if Ginoza is a microcosm of what the Sybil system is meant to be? Is basically there's stuff that happened in the past. The Sybil system has a tragic backstory of humanity, but the Sybil system is going to take a paradox of truth, a hypocrisy, and utilize it to its fullest extent in order for the greater good of humanity. That's the Sybil system. Okay. It's just a great little individual characterization of the Sybil system.
All right,
unless I'm reading it wrong, but I don't think I am.
So here's a wacky idea I have that probably isn't going to come true.
Okay.
But what if the reason that Ginoza has been picking on Akane is actually because his psychopath is getting up to those levels where, where it's questionable, right?
I think it is a bit of self-preservation in there as well.
Because that would also explain why he's rough on Kogami, because he's close to Kogami.
Yes.
Right?
So as Kogami gets dragged down into the mud, so to speak, Ginoza is going to get dragged
dirty
down
himself,
into the mud.
yeah.
So that could be the way that he goes out, is that this whole... Say Makishima just decides to just do a number on their whole team.
Yeah.
And he doesn't kill anyone, but Ginoza gets
turned into
out
an enforcer.
And removed or turned into an enforcer, or has to be executed. Well, that's the whole dramatic tension thing they're building up to with the Dominators and stuff.
Exactly, yes.
Is the idea that at some point the Dominator is going to be turned on one of their teammates and say, you have to kill them. That's obvious. That's such a big foreshadowing thing. It's just a question of
started that at the very beginning.
Yeah, who is it going to be?
Right.
It's even more obvious that it's probably going to be Akane and Kogami pointing the guns at each other.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, and especially because, like, if you look at the first episode, they introduced the idea that there's the stun versus just blood everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere.
And in that same episode, after Akane manages to get the girl's psychopath down low enough that she can stun her,
right?
Then before that, she stuns Kogami, I believe.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's really setting up those little plot elements.
Yeah.
Like, and anything they do in the first episode of a show
carries over all the way into the final one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel like if anything, Ginoza wouldn't be someone that would necessarily be executed. He would get turned into an enforcer, but it's a question of whether or not he would just be like, no, I'm no longer going to be associated with this group because I don't want to. Yeah, I don't want to bring you guys down anymore.
Well, and the whole saying, "Cut off the head and the body dies." If Ginoza's kind of been acting like the leader so far, if he gets taken down, then
it's to an extent they're utilizing Ginoza's fall for potential character growth for Akane, because then Akane would be the new inspector by just rules of corporate structure,
Yeah, process of elimination.
Yeah, maybe they would hire in a new inspector for Akane.
And then it turns out to be Makishima.
Makishima. Wait a minute.
There's
such a dumb theory, but it's so good I want to explore it, what if he becomes the new hiree inspector? That would be so bad. Like, it just wouldn't work.
It totally wouldn't work, but it would be very entertaining to watch. And not just in a funny way, but like I would get a real kick out of it.
Oh yeah, I would get a real kick out of it too. That would be almost straight up comical.
Yeah,
it would be quite.
Okay,
funny.
Now here's one last question that's been burning in my brain.
What's that?
That little jellyfish thing, Candy or whatever, that is Akane's personal assistant. We've seen Makishima do crazy things with holograms so far. Do you think? Because
the little octopus blob is going to turn evil.
I mean, maybe it's just a certain anime we've both seen that makes me suspicious of those types of overly cutesy looking things that
float around things in your ear.
Yeah. But that
so what it is basically what this episode kind of brought up as a social commentary conversation is how much are we willing to accept machines into taking over aspects of our lives?
Yes.
And I think what you have there is basically there's something inside you that rejects the idea of that cute, innocent voice coming from this cold, heartless machine that AI-ish thing is attached to.
Exactly.
So you can't reconcile it in your mind, so you just go, that thing rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
when
true.
In actuality, if it's being programmed by in the correct way, there's nothing immoral or even morally good about it. It's just
a thing. It's a
just
tool.
A thing, yeah.
However, we've seen Makishima hack hologram type stuff. So what if he used those sorts of things as a means of spying?
Possibly. I just stepped on a tack. Ow.
Yeah.
But anyway, the Makishima using that stuff for spying?
Yeah. Like, because, okay, if he's really wanting to play like a sort of cat and mouse game or whatever with Kogami, he needs intel, right? You can't just poke a hornet's nest and see what happens, right? I mean, unless you're, you know,
or maybe he is.
Maybe he is. Maybe that's his thing. I don't know.
It could be, yeah.
But it would make sense, especially just, you know, considering the prowess with computers that he's displayed so far, specifically hacking, that he would do something like that. And there were those weird camera angles and transitions this episode that you said gave you the vibe that they were getting.
They're bugged. That
they were
being
bugged.
Watched.
Yeah.
The other thing that they could have been hinting at in this episode is how both Kogami and Akane had issues with their machines.
Yes.
Kogami had a little little drone robot thing that was walking around beside him before he got into the car with Akane.
Yeah.
That he was like, that thing just pisses me off. It's like, what was going on? We don't know.
It almost felt a little bit shoehorned in, like because it didn't feel natural. Like it felt kind of jerky, like the way that happened, like how fast it was. So that makes me wonder if that means it's more relevant. You know,
more or less relevant.
More relevant.
I would say it's hard to tell. The theme of this episode makes it fit.
That's true.
So it doesn't have to be relevant beyond this episode.
Right, and each episode so far in this show has very much had a theme and a general direction that they wanted it to have.
That's a very good
strictly
point.
Episodic.
Yes, this is a show that blends a bit of the episodic and linear story structure with regards to the themes being very episodic and the story starting to become more and more linear.
Right. Which is pretty dang cool.
Yeah, there are some definite themes that go and take a linear progression from the beginning to the end, and it's mostly through the observances of our main character, Akane, learning more about the world and growing from it as a result. But all in all, fantastic episode.
Yeah, really good.
I am very quickly moving Psycho-Pass up and up my list towards being one of those great thinking animes, because
it's very creative.
Well, it's creative, but it's an intellectual anime.
Yeah.
And I feel intellectually stimulated, much like Senguchi.
Hopefully not too much like Senguchi.
Well, no, I mean it's similar, you know, because his thing is he's got some issues if it's only people killing that's actually giving him stimulation. But I'm saying for me, anime that stimulates my ability to think philosophically is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Almost always a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's something you don't get with every anime. So
yeah,
it's good that they have it.
Just stories in general, you don't get that a lot.
True.
Yeah.
True. That's cool because you brought up, what was it, V for Vendetta earlier?
Yes.
V for Vendetta is a great example of a movie like that by the Wachowski brothers. So of course it's going to make you think philosophically.
Yes.
But yeah. All right, guys, that was a fantastic episode. If you want to watch the next one, go check out the link in the description. We got early access Patreon going on there, and you can watch the next Psycho-Pass episode immediately. But yeah, we'll see you again next Wednesday. But until then, we're Semblance to Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.